Hi, my name is Ailbhe Gill, and I'll be presenting my research on visual perception of light field content. So our research focuses on the capture and analysis of visual attention of light field data. And in this presentation, I'll be going through the background, motivation of our research, the rendered light field dataset, how we collected our eye tracking data, our results, and finally our conclusion. So what are light fields? These are light rays traveling within a 3D space captured using a light field camera. Examples of the light field camera are here. So we have a camera within microlens array. We also can have a grid of cameras set up to capture the scene from different angles, or a single camera moved around on a gantry to capture the scene at different angles. And these can be stored as 2D images as focal stacks, which we use in our research, or as shared perspective views. So the shared perspective views are where each image captures the light rays of a scene approaching from different angles, and the focal stack are slices of a light field focused at a sequence of depths. So what's visual attention? This is the subjective term describing perceived pertinent regions or elements of a scene which stand out in the scene context. So for example, here on the image on the left, we have some stationery in a pot. And here on the right is an example of a visual attention or saliency heat map, which shows the probability of where people look when they view this image. So here you can see that this area is highly salient compared to the rest of the image. Where could visual saliency prediction in light fields be of benefit? The higher dimensionality of light fields brings with it challenges. For example, when rendering light fields for displays, this high dimensionality can make rendering of light fields slow. And so visual attention prediction could allow us to keep a high level of detail in important regions, which we find to be highly salient, and allow artifacts in less important regions. This would mean that we could speed up light field rendering for displays, and visual attention prediction could also be of benefit in areas such as quality assessment and compression of light fields. There has been previous research into light field saliency and visual attention. However, we believe there are some shortfalls in previous light field visual attention research. The ground truth in previous light field visual attention research is a binary map obtained by human segmentation of images, as you can see here on the right. The regions chosen may not encapsulate all visual attention. They lack interpretability for eye fixation prediction. They don't account for attention in the pre-attentive stage before people recognize what they are seeing, and they fail to capture all aspects of visual interest, for example, non-object regions such as text. And this is why we have decided to make our own light field visual attention ground truth dataset. So we decided to collect our own visual attention data by first generating light field renderings that were representative of the 3D nature of light fields, but for 2D display. So first we created focal sweep renderings, and we made videos, 10-second videos displaying each slice of a focal stack in order, one after the other, and these simulated traversing a 3D scene but for a 2D display. So here in the front to back rendering, the area of focus goes from foreground to background, and for the back to front rendering, the region of focus goes from the background to the foreground. In order to compare our ground truth results to previous light field visual attention ground truth works, we also generated a 10-second video displaying the all-in-focus image. So this is where all areas of the light field are shown in focus. We also decided to have 2 region in focus videos where we kept the focus on only one plane for the entire 10-second video, and these were one slice from the focal stack, and these gave us an idea of how powerful the focal cue was in directing visual attention compared to the other renderings we generated. So how to choose a data set. The light fields we chose were based on the following criteria. They contained multiple regions or objects with high color contrast. They contained regions with great edge density and local contrast at various depths and spatial locations, and they were acquired using different methods or camera types. And some examples can be seen here below. So how did we collect our eye fixation data? We used the SR Research iLink 1000 Plus to collect user fixations. We first showed the users all in focus videos to avoid first time viewing bias. We then had a calibration step. We showed the participants the full set of videos displayed in randomized order, and we collected the eye fixation data of 21 participants for the 5 renderings of 20 light fields. So we then used our collected eye fixation data to generate saliency maps. So here you can see our 5 renderings of one of our light fields. We had recorded for each participant eye fixation data. These were then combined, and we used a Gaussian with a sigma equal to 1 degree of visual angle, and we generated a saliency map for each of the renderings over all participants. We also split the videos into 2-second intervals and calculated and generated saliency maps of each interval for all participants for each rendering for all light fields. So here are some examples of the scan paths of participants when they viewed each rendering. So the scan paths show the path that the users took when they were viewing the scene. Areas in blue indicate the start of the scene, and areas in yellow indicate the end of the scene. So if we look at the front and back to front renderings, we can see there's clusters of similar colors. So this shows that many of the users followed the same path when they were viewing the scene. And we can also see for these that the path of focus was going from foreground to background, and it shows that this was where users followed, so they followed the path of focus while watching the video. We can also see for the region 1 and region 2 examples that many of the users tended to look at the regions that were in focus more often than the regions that were out of focus. And we can also see for the all in focus renderings that there's lots of dispersion, which would indicate that the viewers looked all around the scene. We can also see in these examples that there was not a clear path of focus, so the users didn't follow the same path of focus as much as they did in the focal sweep renderings. So here we have an example of the saliency maps generated for each of the 5 renderings over the entire 10-second video over all participants. You can see here in the all in focus rendering and the saliency map generated from it that users look at the entire scene and that the salient map is more dispersed than some of the others. You can also see in the region 1 and region 2 saliency maps that there's greater saliency in the regions that were in focus. You can also see in the front and back to front rendering in this example that there's kind of a line down the center, and that suggests to us that there's some center bias and that users are staying in the center more often than the sides and possibly following the line of focus. So this is another example of a saliency map generated over the entire 10-second video. And here we can see that this building on the left is in the foreground, this building on the right is in the midground, and this building here is in the background. So if we look at the front to back and back to front renderings, we can see that there's some areas such as here that are not present in the all-in-focus rendering. And this is an example of why we think that just using all-in-focus renderings for ground truth does not give a full representation of the salient regions present in a light field. So here's an example of temporal saliency maps where we split the 10-second video into 2-second segments and found the and generated our saliency maps on each segment for all the participants. So here for the couch light field, we have temporal saliency maps of the front to back and all-in-focus renderings. So here in the front to back rendering, the line of focus goes from foreground to background, and the saliency maps over the 10-second video reveal that participants tend to look at regions that are in focus and move to the objects of the scene as they come into focus. So then also in the all-in-focus, we can see that there's many more regions that appear to be salient, and we think that the all-in-focus rendering gives us a very good idea of the areas that are salient when you take the focus cue out of consideration. So here's another example of temporal saliency maps for the Taro small light field. So here we have the region in focus rendering, and we can see here that this is the area that is in focus throughout the entire 10-second video. But if we look at the saliency maps generated, we can see that yes, this region in focus has salient regions. We can also see that this object here is also showing up as a place viewers look, although it is not in the region in focus. And when we look at the all-in-focus rendering for this light field, we can see that this center object is the main salient region throughout the 10-second video. And this indicates that if an area is highly salient in the all-in-focus rendering, then it is often also salient in the other renderings, even when it is not an area in focus. So we wanted to see if the dispersion we were seeing in the saliency maps of the all-in-focus renderings could be quantitatively observed. So we did this by calculating the entropy of fixation maps we created, which indicate a 1 if there was a fixation and a 0 if there was not a fixation. And we did this for all the renderings of all the light fields, averaged over the observations of all participants. And we found from this that the average entropy of the all-in-focus rendering was higher than the other renderings, and this was confirmed with a two-tailed t-test that the all-in-focus result was significantly different to the others, and this higher entropy suggests a greater randomness in the data. So what did our findings reveal? Well, the saliency maps that we generated give an insight into where a user fixates when shown different light field renderings. We also revealed with our findings that using segmented objects of all-in-focus renderings as ground truth doesn't fully capture visual attention of light fields. So salient information not present in all-in-focus renderings was revealed by saliency maps of focal sweep renderings. More dispersion was found in all-in-focus renderings than focally varying renderings, and we also observed that viewers did not only fixate on objects, but on other non-object regions. So finally, our research output was fixation data captured for different light field renderings, saliency maps that depict the likelihood of eye fixation for use in eye fixation prediction, and we also showed the limitations of the ground truth of other light field saliency research. Thank you for listening, and below is our research webpage.